And the breaking headline at this hour, just in, the former president has pleaded not guilty to the indictment that has been presented in that courtroom, the 15th floor of criminal court in Lower Manhattan. It's our understanding that he planned on making this plea himself and not through his lawyers. And John Santucci, what have you learned?
David, I'm told by a source in the courtroom the former president entered a plea of not guilty. We understand that they are going through the indictment right now. I don't have a readout on that just yet. But as that visual showed, the source telling me the former president sitting there listening quite intently right now, David.
It's your understanding so far, John, that it was the president, the former president himself, who entered the plea?
That I do not have clarity on, David. I'm working on that. I will keep you updated.
We'll see if that bears out. That was an indication given earlier. And again, as John points out, this would be a very strong indication, Kate and Dan, that we're going to soon know what's in this indictment, the fact that he's pleaded not guilty.
Yeah, and look, it's going to take them a little time to go through the indictment. If it is, dozens of counts, although if it is redundant and it may sort of reflect exactly the same language in a lot of the counts, just a little bit of a different fact as to which record, et cetera. So we don't know exactly, how detailed or complicated the indictment is going to be. But yes, I would expect that we should be getting this very soon. They have it now. They've reviewed it. He's pled not guilty, and this is the time for them to release it. And it's going to be released electronically. So there's no, it's not like they're literally need to walk out of the courthouse to deliver it to somebody. They've got it there, and they just have to decide when to release it.
Dan, what do we see after this? I mean, take us through what the American public will see. They'll enter the plea. They'll leave the courthouse. They'll head back to Mar-a-Lago. The rest of us will start reporting out what's inside this indictment. But where does the case go from here? This is just the very beginning.
Yeah, this is going to take a while. I mean, the first thing is going to be, there are going to be motions, right? There are going to be efforts by the defense in particular to dismiss the case, to limit the charges. If there are felonies, to say the felonies should go away. There's going to be a whole list of arguments that the defense is going to make about why the indictment should fail.
Are we looking at months, more than a year here?
Oh, yeah. The entire process, I would expect, is going to take more than a year. But that is going to be largely in the hands of the defendant. That is largely in the hands of Donald Trump. Remember, there's a right to a speedy trial. If the defendant wants to move a case quickly, a defendant can move a case quickly. That's not really up to the prosecutor. Now, there are certain things that can happen that are beyond a defendant's control, new evidence, whatever it is. But typically, it is up to the defendant to decide how quickly do we move this forward to trial. I would expect that Donald Trump is going to want to wait, that there is going to be no rush on his part to move forward with this. I think there probably will be a rush to get out some of his motions, right? To say that this is a faulty indictment, that there shouldn't be any felonies here, that there's no crime committed, et cetera. That I think he's going to want out quickly. But when it comes to actually going to trial, I think we're probably well over a year away.
And that becomes part of the political calculation, obviously.
Right, yeah.
I think that's right. At least, I would say at least a year. And in terms of kind of the early responses by Trump's defense team, I think we'll learn a lot about their strategy through their sort of early responses. If they move to dismiss these charges on the basis that this is, as Tacopina has been sort of alluding to in interviews, that this is a political persecution, that this whole case is flawed for that reason, that I think injects some of the political rhetoric into this legal conversation. If instead they say things like the statute of limitations has already run, this was 7 years ago, probably that's a 5-year statute, they're going to have to figure out how to finesse that. The prosecutors they may do it by saying the statute was paused while Trump was out of New York, of course being the president in D.C. So there could be legal arguments, there could be more politically inflected arguments, there could be a combination. But I do think they're going to move quickly to try to shape the narrative that will give us some real clues about their larger strategy.
For people at home watching and they hear this notion of motion to dismiss, what are the chances of that happening?
It's unlikely, but there are some real arguments. Look, we haven't seen the indictment yet. We need to see exactly what it is to know how strong the arguments may not be. I think once Kate and I get a chance to actually review what exactly they're alleging, immediately we'll be able to think about, okay, what could they argue as a defense attorney to eliminate the charges? But if there are felony counts here, and it is in connection with falsification of business records, there is going to be an immediate and serious argument that the felony counts shouldn't apply. We're going to have to see what is it that the prosecution is arguing that allows the misdemeanor to rise to the level of a felony?
I have a million questions for you on that, but I'm going to wait until we see what's in the indictment. Yeah, because this could go in a multitude of directions. I wanted to tell the viewers at home what they're looking at. Beneath me there on the screen, that's, I gather, Mark Burstein, that's the hallway there on the 15th floor. Yeah, these are the live pictures, and we will see the president one more time when he leaves the courtroom after they list the charges, the counts in this indictment. As Dan Abrams has been saying here, there's a good chance that many of these counts are very similar in nature. Again, we simply don't know. That is widespread speculation. Multiple outlets suggesting that that will be the case today. We are eager to get the indictment. We should have it shortly thereafter. We do know that as you look at this, that the former president was given this indictment, but not long before he entered that courtroom. He was brought into the building. He was booked, fingerprinted, and as Aaron Kotursky said, no handcuffs, no mugshot, even though mugshots really aren't used in New York State anyway. There had been many questions about whether or not that would happen with the former president. A lot of the argument was he's one of the most, if not the most famous face in the world at this point. Why would you need one? He's now in that courtroom, though. The charges are being listed. They're being explained. He's entered a not guilty plea. John Santucci reporting that out. What we don't know is whether or not he entered that plea himself. Though there was a suggestion early on that he would. Flanked by his expanded legal team, we know that the lawyer to the left there on the screen added in the last 24 hours a real signal that the former president recognizes what he's up against, whether or not you believe in the merits of this case or not, that he's not going to chance it, that these three attorneys will be the faces, and perhaps there will be, you know, tweaks along the way of the legal team. We have seen that before, haven't we, John?
We've seen all kinds of churn in this legal team. I just want to make one point about what Kate and Dan said about this likely taking a year to get to trial. Just put that against the political calendar. About a year from the day before yesterday is going to be the Wisconsin primary, which would have followed a whole, probably enough primaries to clinch a Republican nominee. The Republican convention is about 15 and a half months from now. So if you have a trial that starts in roughly a year, depending on how it plays out, you could have you know, a jury deliberating on the eve of a Republican convention. I mean, this is playing out against a political calendar, and it's not the only criminal case that will be.
Just extraordinary, John, when you think about it in those terms. It's also fascinating to watch this unfold, and I use that word carefully, when you think about the Republican opponents that he will face in this primary process. Obviously, Ron DeSantis hasn't declared, but very much looks and acts like a presidential candidate. But he, Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, with the exception of the governor you interviewed in the recent days, Asa Hutchinson, everyone else, though, is rallying around the man they would like to beat for the nomination.
What he's done is he's forced his potential opponents and some of his actual opponents to come out and defend him on this case. Now, not everybody's going to do it. You mentioned Asa Hutchinson. I mean, we'll see what happens with Chris Christie, who was just on, you know, with us. If he ends up running, he's also been quite calling this a serious case. But look, we see Republicans, by and large, coming to Donald Trump's defense. The only statement I've seen so far since he walked into that courtroom has been from the number 3 Republican in the House, and she has come out, Elise Stefanik, and she has attacked the judge, attacked this process, and put it directly in the context of the presidential campaign, saying that Donald Trump will defeat this the way he defeated the impeachments, the way he's defeated other investigations, and he will get elected president in 2024. That's the number 3 Republican in the House using this as an opportunity, not just to defend Donald Trump against these allegations, but also to put it in the context of the presidential campaign.
John Carl on the political implications and the race for the White House, which we cannot forget is well underway. I want to bring
Watch breaking news on YouTube. Subscribe to ABC7 Chicago Eyewitness News.